Alright, what is poppin', people? So, if you're, of course, a loyal viewer, you saw that earlier today, I uploaded a live, and one of the comments that I got in that live was someone wanting me to go over, or do a team where I team build and just talk about, like, essential aspects when building. Now, I told them that, yeah, that's probably something possible to do. But I first want to address the issues with a general team building video and why it's kind of hard to give someone a great way to build teams. I think the biggest one is, first of all, not every team is built the same way. So, when I'm looking to build a team, I have many things in mind right from the get-go. One, what kind of team am I trying to build? Am I trying to build offense, hyper offense, stall, balance, bulky offense? One of those. Two, what am I wanting to build around? Am I trying to build a certain Pokemon? Am I trying to build with a, core of Pokemon? Which could be, offensive core or a defensive core. And another thing I ask is, what do I want it to do? So, for example, if I wanted to build with, I don't know, Clawitzer, I'm trying to first think, right when it gets Clawitzer, okay, what kind of team am I putting it on, and what do I want the team overall to do? And because you get all these questions, it's very hard to go over and just generally say, oh, how do you build an Inu? Because there's not a real correct answer. I mean, the answer is, it depends. What are you trying to do with your team? What do you want to build with? What kind of team do you want to make? All of these questions vastly change how the team building process goes. And while I would say there are general tips for teams in Inu and really any tier, based on what the predominant threats are, and a few things that I personally try to abide by with every team. Obviously the keyword in there is try. Sometimes it's not possible, or I just forget and have to redo past parts of the team. But even then, with that, with those general things I still try to keep in mind, it's not like they guide the process. But I can still try to build a team in front of y'all. Obviously, normally I'd just do this during a PS live, or a live stream, my bad. Because, I don't know, y'all get to see every little, pretty much every thought process that goes on. I think when I'm doing it like this, it's a lot harder, because, I don't even do this scripted, right? All this is coming off the top of my head. But I do think I could at least still try to give some examples. I could pick a Pokemon around in the tier, and then I could try to build out in front of y'all, and y'all can at least see the kind of thought that goes into team building. I think also if I'm doing an PS live like this, or a team building live I'll call it, I'll at least try to organize my thoughts a little bit more, whereas when I'm doing a live stream it's mostly a lot of me mumbling and going, okay, I need this, okay, this. It's harder to follow maybe. So I think what I'm probably going to do is rebuild a team that I already have, and kind of go on the thoughts that I had with that team. So, a while ago, we got Giggleth, right? We got it about a week ago. And when this Pokemon first dropped, I had several thoughts, one of which was, wow, this Pokemon made a very interesting meta occur in SMNU with sand teams. The next thought was, what if I put a choice band on this? So, CB Giggleth is a very cool Pokemon because it's very strong, right? If we look at stat 135, and you max this out, you see this 405 with a CB 607. That's a big number, and around these parts we really like big numbers. The second thought was, okay, this learns Explosion. Or I guess that was the third thought. And because this gets Explosion, one of the things we first got to look at is if we're building around a wall breaker like Giggleth, we're trying to think of what does Giggleth do as a breaker? What kind of Pokemon does it draw in? What kind of Pokemon does it do well supporting? That's not a sentence. What kind of Pokemon does it support well as a result? So, if I'm looking at Giggleth, the immediate Pokemon that I think of that it's going to draw in are ground types and some of the bulky water types. And this is also hence why I think Explosion's a pretty cool move. Giggleth. you could draw in Pokemon like, say, Mudsdale, like Rhydon. Okay, Rhydon doesn't fit into the explosion category. You can draw in Pokemon like Mudsdale, I'll leave it at that. And you can get a key boom off. And that can support a lot of teammates that need Mudsdale gone. And in addition, just pressuring bulky water type with Stone Edge. Heavy Slam's cool because it lets Giggleth soft check comfy a little bit. And it's also, you know, a more accurate way of beating down something like a Whimsicott or a Silvally Fairy. Given this Pokemon's natural bulk of 85, 130, 80, keep in mind that 80 Spit F is also further augmented by Sand, gives Giggleth a lot of leeway when it wants to wall break. Because you can actually hard switch it into certain attacks, or leave it in versus certain Pokemon, and it can probably live a hit. And so, I look at Giggleth, I see what it does. I also notice the ability Sand, and one of the first Pokemon that comes to mind is Lycanroc. Now, this isn't a full Sand team, I want to make that clear. What I'm going for here is an offensive core of Giggleth and Lycanroc, with Giggleth to wall break, and in Lycanroc looking to take advantage of what Giggleth can draw in, force damage on, and just do in general. Sandrush Lycanroc is a pretty cool option for being supported by Giggleth as a result. And I do want to just throw this as a general note out there. I do think that Sand Slash is generally better if you're trying to do like a Sand team. If you're like running maybe, I don't know, Smooth Rock Rest Giggleth. I think Sand Slash is a bit more, I think it's a little easier to build around, personally. I don't really know why I feel that way, but you know. Now, obviously, one of the things to note here is we got our offensive core. And we're probably going to try to build some sort of balanced build with it that maybe has some offensive leaning to it. I want to do something that can help shore up the defensive issues. This team is so far 2 rock types. That gives you a lot of openings. You're weak to fighters, you're weak to water types, you're weak to grass types. One of the Pokemon that I think immediately goes well then is Whimsicott. It covers up a lot of those issues. The fire weakness and poison weakness of Whimsicott's, and the flying weakness too. Covered up well by both of these. And when we think about the Pokemon that Whimsicott draws in, I'm thinking some fire types. For starters, I'm thinking something like Golbat. That's going to come into Whimsicott. Even something like Aggron could. All of these Pokemon, one of these guys here can take advantage of very easily. And so Whimsicott makes for a pretty nice pivot, in my eyes. Because I don't see a great way to fit a Defogger on here, I'm going to go with Defog Whimsicott. There's probably a time and place for other sets as well, but I do like offensive Defog Whimsicott here. And now when I think of other things that this team likes, I do feel that one of the things you want to do is maximize the ability of your team to bring in the breakers, right? Lycanroc is in general supposed to be a sweeper for this team with the sand going up. And, you know, Swords Dance helps it clean with boosted Accelerock. But maybe you want Lycanroc to break for something else on your team. Maybe you want Lycanroc and Giggleth to be breaking for another win con. You want to get them in as much as you can. I think Vaporeon's actually kind of cool. Now, when you think about things Vaporeon brings in, if we're doing like Flip Turn, and I'll leave this note here, I think Flip Turn Vapo can afford heavy duty boots. But because I'm running Vaporeon on Sand, I'm going to try it with lefties still. So, the logic here with Vapo, what it draws in, so I think things like Porygon 2, I think things like Druddigon, I think things like the grass types, some of them are pretty slow as well. Gastrodon. While I can't necessarily pivot out versus all of those with Flip Turn, it does open up some linear sequences where I know what my, or maybe not, I don't know what my opponent will ever do, but I can have a pretty good idea of what they'll do. And it makes it for a little bit easier, it makes it a little easier on me to figure out how I want to work against what my opponent would do. And some of those, of course, I didn't know Vapo can Flip Turn out on directly. And in addition to that, Vaporeon's Wish support with flip turn is just super cool to support Giggleth. Makes it a little easier to pass the wishes to him. It also just makes it a little bit easier to keep Giggleth alive for a long time, so I can keep getting sand up, so that Lichen Rock won't have to worry about maybe being, outsped by as much, since I'm going adamant over Jolly. And as I look here, there are a couple things that are pains to this team. One, Comfy. This team leans a bit more offensively. Although we're probably building out a mostly balanced team, I would still call this offense where we're going to end up with. Comfy tears through our team. Comfy's generally really solid into offense, so this isn't really a shock. Another thing too, Toxicroak. Again, both of our breakers don't really like Croak. Whimsicott doesn't really beat Croak since I'm not running Psychic and I'm not even running Specs, so I don't force as much chip onto it. And Vaporeon also gives in a lot of opportunities for Croak to switch in. So, along with those things and the fact I need hazards on this team, I think Garbador works really well. It covers up a lot of the defensive issues that we were having. And it can help make our team actually, have a way of, not Psychic again, it helps us our team can have a way of pressuring the opponent even without having damage being directly done. Plus, sand with spikes, really annoying. And in general, I do think heavy duty boots have made Stealth Rock a little bit more droppable on teams. I personally would still run hazards on every team if I can fit it. Some kind of hazard. T-Spike, Spike, Rocks, I want them on there because not every Pokemon's going to have boots. And I want to be able to punish lazy team building. If someone's not running boots on something, or someone's forgetting to run a grounded poison, I want to be able to punish it with T-Spikes. If someone's just foregoing hazard removal entirely, let's get some spike layers up. Maybe we'll punish them that way. And I think you can afford a little bit of speed creep on Garbador. We'll just do that much. And of course, Psychic hits Toxicroak. Wow, my mouse is dead. You like this little jumping around? Wow, I don't. I don't even know where my mouse is half the time right now. Might be time to change the batteries. Anyhow. Is my mouse dying, like, entirely right now? Now he's back. I was about to say, I'm like, might need to plug in my cord mouse. Anyhow. What we have here is a really good foundation. There are a few things I noticed that are a little annoying. The ground weakness is there. It's not the worst thing ever. One of the things I also noticed is we don't have a Volt immunity. I would say a Volt Switch Absorber is really good to have on every team. While Volt Switch isn't necessarily always going to be prevalent in the tier, you may just have, a lack of electric types that use Volt Switch. Say in a tier where Togedemaru is the best electric type. Well, that's going to use U-Turn for pivoting. Inyu does have prevalent Volt Switchers, Rotom and Magneton being the two that I think of immediately. So it's here I ask myself, how much do I care? What do I mean by that? Well, every boy goes through a period in their life where they need to decide, do I want to have dedicated defensive stops to every Pokemon in the tier? Or am I okay with just trying to be the better player and not giving my opponent, chances? That's not always possible. And I do think that this is a pretty large issue. There are two things that I can do here. Two things, right? One, I could just say I don't care, and I could forego an electric immunity entirely. If I were to do that, I'd probably run, I don't know, a Comfy here, just for, opposing offense. Plus, Comfy's really good. I think another option, though, and this is actually different from the team that I made, is going Sandslash. Now, I did mention how this team wasn't meant to be, dedicated, what's it called? Dedicated sand. I think Sandslash still works here, benefiting as well from Sandrush. It can, this Breaker Core, both of these also have sweeping capabilities, which is kind of cool. The question is, do I want to do this still? A big thing that you have to also ask yourself while you're building a team, or something you have to acknowledge, I guess I'll say. You're probably going to have to actually play with the team some too. I think if you go into laddering session with the sole intent of showing yourself this team is perfect and has no flaws, you're probably going to be met with disappointment, because I don't think too frequently you run into a team where you just struck gold in the builder. I think much of the time, getting the team to work properly takes experience on the ladder, because you could find out how bad are the matchups you think are kind of bad. You know, if I'm building a team and I think I have a horrible matchup versus, say, Salazzle, well, maybe that's just something that exists in Team Builder, and when I actually play against Salazzle, I see more of the outs that I can take versus it. Or maybe you think you have a great matchup into, say, Ninjask, I don't know. And as you're playing with the team, you realize, oh, Ninjask finds far too many ways to just sweep me late. I have very little way of actually just forcing it out through aggressive play throughout the battle. You know, maybe, oh, I have no Pokemon that even resists U-turn, so it's pivoting for super free. There are a lot of questions I think you have to ask yourself while you play, otherwise you're just not being in a good position. And so now the answer to my question of, do I care about the lack of an electric immunity? On this team, I'm going to say no. And so I'm going to go Comfy. I like Comfy. It gives the team a much more dedicated a dedicated sweeper late. I do think, for what it's worth, that there is definitely the potential to just run, what's it called? Sandslash. You know, we're even going to try this. We're going to try a very epic set. This is not what I have in that other team, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And we need to see this. Let's just maximize leftovers and then a little bit of speed. Yeah, there we go. I don't think there's any base 60s that are relevant in the tier. Might just be forgetting something. Now this Comfy set is very cursed, and it's very good at shutting down stall. You could go Taunt over Aromatherapy. I think Aromatherapy is kind of cool on this team, helping support Giggleth further with like the Wish support from Vapo. Could potentially clear out some like burns maybe it gets if you're trying to switch it into Rotom. The one nice thing at least about this team is that Giggleth is bulky enough to help deal with Rotom. Did I just change the dimensions of my screen? Not enough to where it looks wrong in OBS, so we're good, boys. But yeah, I do think Comfy fits here pretty well. It also gives another fighting resist. Wasn't really an issue, but, you know. Eh. Also, I think Comfy with spike support is just incredibly dirty and unfair. My god, this mouse needs batteries. But yeah, I think this is generally a workable team. And there are definitely some flaws in it. So, you know, here is where I invite you. Find where you think there are holes in the team and do what you think helps patch up the holes. How do you deal with the fact there's no rock resist on this team? You know? That's a legitimate question. Because I do think something like, say, Aggron or an opposing Lichen Rock could pose a huge issue to this team if you don't position well. Do I think that these are, like, unwinnable matchups? Hell no. But that's because I've used this team before. And so I've gotten at least accommodated to making do with the issues that it has. As I said, I think Sandslash Last, though, does work, and that is a rock resist and a volt immunity. Maybe it's even better than Comfy there. I really don't know. I haven't tried out this Comfy set even. The other team has, I think, Life Orb, Giga Drain, Taunt instead of Lefty's Stored Power Aromatherapy. The point I'm also trying to make here is I feel like teams always have a little bit of wiggle room. If you find a team that... No team is perfect, I'm going to just say that right now. No matter how much you want to praise that you've optimized a team to the point where it can't be optimized anymore, I think there's always a way you can change it a little bit more. But I think what it usually does is it just changes up your weaknesses a little bit. You can make these minor changes to teams that don't really shift the overall quality of it that much. I think generally you can find some small upgrades to certain matchups that end up being downgrades in other matchups. The point ends up being, how much do you feel that you can accommodate for such changes when you're actually playing? So for instance, if you put Sandslash over Comfy, yeah, that gives you a Volt immunity and a Rock resist. But what it also does is it means that the team just has a much less obvious win con late. Maybe Oh, that's not where I meant to click. Maybe you mean that means that the team just has to rely on lichen rock, and maybe you could try jolly lichen rock. That could work. You do sand slash here, and then you say jolly SD lichen rock instead, so that it can function as a win con inside of sand still, but also a little bit better outside because of the boost in speed, meaning that some Pokemon that you would outspeed normally with without there some Pokemon you'd be outsped by if you ran adamant, but now you outspeed with jolly. Maybe you view that is worthwhile. I don't know. None of that really made sense the more I think about it. The point I'm getting is this. I think Sand Slash and Comfy both could be here in the last slot. I think they each have their pros and cons. I recommend trying out both if you want to use this team. Tell me how you feel about either slot. Maybe you have another idea about the team. Another instance, I built a couple sand teams. Another thing I've tried is eject button Jellicent here. Similarly, you're trying to get in the sand abusers. I think that team has a sand slash instead of a lichen rock as well. But eject button Jellicent kind of functions like eject button Slowbro did in Gen 7 in you when we were running sand. Again, the point here is experiment with the team. Make changes, see how they work. If you think the team has a bad matchup somewhere, try the team out and see in those matchups when you're actually playing against them, how does it still feel? Anyhow, guys, I hope this was helpful. I'll probably try to do an actual live soon. Maybe I'll do one right after I upload this. We'll see. Kind of just depends on me mood, you know? Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, your morning, whatever part of the day it is. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.